Thanks, everybody. Let's call the meeting to order for the, I think this is maybe the third Finance Committee meeting we've had. February, March, we missed April. So I'd like to just call the meeting to order. I don't know what else I have to do on that. I'm not. Okay. So I think the first thing we need to do is the approval of the minutes from the March 2nd, 2020 meeting. Chris, if you can pull those up real quick. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at these. I know there's a few things on here that maybe we want to come back and address, or maybe just one or two things. But I don't know if we'll just address those at the end if that's okay with everyone. But I move to approve these minutes. I don't know if I even have to do that since there's three of us. But
okay, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the next thing. Chris, can you go back to the agenda? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the first quarter budget versus actual, and I think I believe Tammy's going to maybe talk a little bit about this. We have the spreadsheet that was provided by the Clerk Treasurer's Office, and I do it just to make a couple quick comments here. I know you guys, I mean, this is our first kind of foray at this, and I really do appreciate your hard work, and I know there's some back and forth, with how everything's going to work, and I do think everybody's doing the best of their ability and trying to get this information out. Hopefully we'll get better at it. Or maybe this time it'll be completely seamless. I have no idea, but it's probably a work in progress, and I'm sure that anything you do more than once, everything's hard till it becomes easy, right? So throw out one Joe Edward-ism this morning, right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it if we can. And I know I've made a few comments, at least on the budget, that I just have a few questions. But if we can start out, maybe Tammy, do you want to talk or on this?
Sure, I can speak to it. So to the extent that we have the information on the expense budget to actual, when you're looking at the report, and I'll pull it up here in a minute, but I just want to go over a few things first. So some of the departments were loaded as just divided by 4, and those salary lines, personnel lines, if they're just divided by 4, they're going to show as over, because a higher portion should be prorated to the first and second quarters, because there's 7 pays in each of the first 2 quarters and only 6 in the last 2 quarters. So as you're going through that, you might notice that. A few of the budgets had expenses that were anticipated to be invoiced in future quarters that were invoiced in Q1. So there are existing appropriations available in the year in the future quarters, but they were invoiced in Q1. Several funds should also, something to discuss, that we can add the budgets to reflect what we expect the transactions to happen per, say, a schedule. Examples are some internal funds where transfers occur from one fund to another to be paid out of another fund. On the report, you'll notice there's principal and interest and things like that. There was one debt payment that was due on 3/28 that was posted on 4/15. And then you'll notice in the 500 series that the grant funds are not appropriated. So those are just some notes on the expense side, and I can go through and kind of show you what you can be looking for when you're looking at those quarterly reports to kind of get an idea of what that should be and help you through those reports. On the revenue side, just based on looking in the system, there were a few fees that came in higher than anticipated in the first quarter. Fire inspection fees, park impact fees, road impact fees, and storm erosion control permit fees. We had great revenue in the first quarter, and a lot of that was due to multiple commercial developments from daycares coming to Westfield to GFS and filing those permit fees. So let me pull open the expense report and see if I can share it here. So can everyone see my screen right now?
I cannot yet. It says all windows are minimized.
Yeah, I've got the same thing.
Chris, can you advise?
I can see it, so I'm not sure.
Okay, and then...
And the stream can see it as well.
Okay.
I can see it also.
Okay, so maybe internally and on the stream, but not for some others that are on the call that are external users.
Yeah, this is Troy. I cannot see it. Mine just says all windows are minimized.
Okay, but you do have a copy of the report if you want to pull that up on your screen.
Yeah. I've got the. Are you talking about the expense one, Tammy?
Yes, the appropriation summary.
Yep. Yeah, I have that.
So on this report, and I'll just go through the basics for everybody. That way, anyone that's looking at it from the outside would also understand what all the fields are in the columns and everything like that. So at the top, you have the fund. So this is the general fund that we're looking at. And you have a date range. So this is just the first quarter budget. Forwarded encumbrances are the activity that would happen if we appropriated in 2020 and we did not spend that money in 2020.
Tammy, we cannot hear you. I don't think.
Tammy, you're losing audio.
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see. Should I call in then? Chris, do you
I would say right now you're loud and clear.
Yeah,
okay.
You're fine there. Yeah.
Okay, I will hold my laptop up and speak into it. So the forwarded encumbrances, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So those encumbrances are basically if you have something appropriated in one budget year and you don't adopt it in the next budget year. So normally we do the budget process by October. And so if a project was still on track to be invoiced and paid in that year and it didn't get done by the last meeting of the year, the council can then encumber that forward into the next year. So we typically try to stay away from that because it complicates the budget process and getting the entries in the system and things like that. So you shouldn't see very many of those, but that's a tool that you guys can use going forward. The current column is the current budget. So that's what would have been adopted by council on the agenda and everything from the budget year. Transfers, additionals, and adjustments are other methods that the clerk's office uses in order to do adjustments to the budget side of things. On the actual side, you'll see encumbrances. Those are contracts that we have that we are expecting to be paid out of certain funds. That helps the departments be able to manage those contracts and to keep track of those high dollar amounts. You'll see expenses quarter to date and expenses year to date. Since it's just the first quarter, those two are both the same. Otherwise, you'd see that expense quarter to date as just the quarter and then year to date as a cumulative. That unexpended balance, if you look in the formulas, it's taken into account the forwarded encumbrances plus the current plus the transfers, additional, and adjustments minus the expenditures year to date. So that does not take into account the PO encumbrances because those have not yet been invoiced. Okay. And then you'll see a budget amount, a percentage, and then that will tell you where that particular line is in relation to the budget as far as the expenditures. At the bottom line, you can see in bold here that that's the total for the department above it. So in the first department for admin, there's a budget of $701. We have encumbrances of $38,500. and then the expenses are 780, so it's under budget by 120,573.01, and so that's a 17% under that quarter. As I mentioned with the salary lines, that you might see that this total budget is over by $2,600, and the salary line shows as over by $3,051. And so that budget, if you look in the financial system, was just divided by 4. And so the reason why this budget is likely over is because the proration of the salary amounts.
Oh, Tammy?
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
can you hear me? I just want to mention, when I ran this report of March 31st, it was a payroll, last payroll wasn't entered at the time. But it's the March 31st figures of the slice payroll side is a little bit different when the actual. So it's only payroll has a slice different figures because March 31st at the time when I ran it, this payroll figures wasn't entered at the time.
Okay.
So does it still, because when we were doing the budgeting, we talked about 7 payrolls for the first quarter, 7 payrolls for the second, and 6 for the third, and 6 for the fourth. So it's important that those get posted in the quarters that were communicated so that these reports are more accurate. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Well, the only thing is the budgets, because we didn't get anything, we had to take the year and divide them by quarters just to be able to put something in here. So
Right.
that's why it's done this way. So at the end of the year, it'll all come out in the wash. I don't know that I'd pay much attention to the payroll right now, just because of that. They're not ever going to be unless we go back and change it. So if the council's okay with just keeping it this way, we'll just keep it this way. And at the end of the year, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm
So-
okay.
It'll either be over or under. So, yeah.
So,
Scott.
so this is Scott. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this, and first of all, again, to repeat Troy's sentiments, thank you both of you for everyone for working on this and putting it together. I appreciate the explanation both from Cindy and Tammy here, but one of the things that I'm looking at, and as I'm going through this, again, your explanation's hitting the nail right on the head. It makes perfect sense. I get it, but this is a tool, or this is information for us, right? As far as the city council goes, but it's also something that the taxpayers are going to, they're going to look at as well, if they so choose. One of the things that I see that's missing is footnotes and things like that really quick, really simple explanation that says, hey, here's why this number's off, and again, really quick explanation, and we move on to the next one. So stuff like that is spot on, but having that just very brief explanation is probably going to keep a whole lot of people keep their nerves in line with where they should be, and not let anybody get too upset or too uptight about a number that without an explanation looks like it could be way off.
Sure.
Right.
And so if you notice column S, it's small. It was whatever formatting was already in there, but I have a column called notes. And so on this line for local road and street, I have expenses budgeted in future quarters. And then on those lines that we were discussing up above, you can see that here it says salary line divided by 4. And
Where's that at?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that.
Let me see if I can move it over a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you have it on yours. Okay.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I was looking at the one that Scott. So like on ours, it probably doesn't say that because.
Got it. Yes, absolutely.
That makes me feel better because I thought I was really missing something.
Okay. Yeah, we're good. So it shows the
So let me
quick note salary line divided by 4 or the expenses budgeted in future quarters, so that to your point that there is no question that it's not keying up a additional appropriation need or anything like that it's within the budget for the year.
Okay, so forgive me here very quickly, and I'm sorry, I need to understand this before I can wrap my mind around the rest of it. The document that you're showing on your screen, which unfortunately technology we can't see it right now, that differs from the sheet that I'm looking at?
My version I got in Excel from the clerk's office last night, and so I was able to go in and add just a quick column that says notes, and then just explain where that budget for the department is over, and then whether it's the salary line issue or whether it's expenses budgeted in a future quarter, or this is an opportunity that we can add the budget in the line so that you guys can have a better indicator there.
Perfect. So forgive me for interrupting. What I want to know, like, what is going to be and this is probably a question, Troy and Joe, what is going to be the official document here? I'm assuming the document that Tammy has that has those footnotes.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I would say. I would say I agree, Scott. So the protocol, I think going forward, and I think again this is our first time through it. So again, I'm kind of on the same page as you are, and Tammy's doing a good job explaining this. But is that the protocol would be to have what she's showing on her screen, we disseminate that out to everyone, and then somehow we post that. So the taxpayers can see these things, because that way that they can, and then if they have questions, they can always come back through the finance committee to ask us, as opposed to going to bother Tammy or Cindy or anyone like that.
Perfect.
Is that fair, Tammy, Cindy?
So one question that I would have. So the clerk's office does post information monthly and uploads it to the website as soon as it's available. And from admin standpoint, I know on that resolution it says to present to council. Do you want the presentation to council finance or to the actual council?
Yeah. So ultimately, I think the overview should be to the entire council.
Okay.
Because I know some of them are on the call this morning, but and I guess we can talk about that. But Joe, I mean, I was always under the impression that we would start with it and then it would be presented to the entire council in just in more of a brief overview. So that way,
I agree. I think the finance committee ought to see it first, and then the entire council, so that any questions that we might have about it we could answer any questions or clear up any misunderstandings that we would have about it. But I think this is fine. We're miles ahead of where we used to be.
yeah.
Troy, Scott, Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
When we post ours, it's after we close the month, and what we have right here is just what we've sent you at the end of the quarter. Yep. So if with her notes on the end, if you would want us to, if she'll send those to us, we can post those along when we post the closing version.
That would be great.
What I would say on that is whatever works. I think the final product or the finished product, we need to have those footnotes.
Right.
And I think maybe leaving it to you guys to figure out what process works best for you guys. And again, it is a little bit of a learning curve here as we're trying to figure out what we're looking for, and you guys are trying to figure out what we're looking for. So.
Once admin gets the footnotes on them, then and sends them to us, then we can post them with the rest of our reports. So you'll see all of them.
So Mr. Chairman, this is Todd. On this note for managed expectations, I would suggest that as the clerk does the close at the end of each month, much like the primary council agenda, in preparation for this monthly meeting with the committee, that we would have all those submissions exchanged back and forth and in your hands by the Wednesday before, because obviously we're meeting on a Friday, but typically you meet on a Monday.
Right.
So the Wednesday prior to that Monday meeting.
Todd, let me interrupt you, and I apologize.
Yes.
It's not typically a Monday. It's typically if you're talking about the finance committee, it's the first business day.
Yeah.
Okay, because it just so happens it has been Monday, right? So
yeah,
the first business. So okay, fair enough. The Wednesday before the finance committee is to meet. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
Okay, just so you know, though, we won't have the final close until we close, and that is not always before the finance committee meeting, because we get the bank rec done and then the fund report is where it's supposed to be. So, I mean, we can give you what we have like this, but you won't get final ones until the month is closed, and can't be done on the last day of every month.
So the intended goal here is what I'm driving for is so we have a finished product in the hands of the Council of Finance in ample time prior to them convening their meeting. So
Right.
if there are any questions, we can exchange those back and forth and kind of refine this presentation as we move forward. So we can talk after the meeting what's an acceptable day.
Yeah.
Just to give the Council of Finance and all the participants an opportunity to review it and ask questions.
Well, just to be clear, though, we can't close the month until we have the bank recs, and we have to wait until we get the bank recs to do it. So that's not
Hey,
always.
Cindy.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I mean, so like in my business, I don't wait till the bank statement comes. I get online, within like 2 days after, month end and do my bank rec. I assume you guys can access yours right away as well?
I'd have to talk to Carrie. I don't know, Misha's on here too. Misha?
Yes. Some of we get mostly we get online. We do it, but it's some of investment is we cannot wait certain dates. Since they don't come the end of a month or first of a day. They usually come 10th of the month. They usually generate investment statement. They don't generate the end of a month. They usually first week of following month, which is a statement is valuable, and the first week of each month.
Okay, so we probably shouldn't have. So we should be able to get the rec done, right? I mean.
Yeah.
So
once they
basically you want to. True statement, bank rec, best we can do it with usually probably second week of the month.
That's fine. That gives us plenty of time then, right?
I don't remember are the meetings like the second. I don't remember what the
Yeah, so the finance committee meeting is the first business day of the month.
God,
Yeah,
okay,
so
I couldn't remember.
In almost every case, I can't think of a case where it wouldn't work out. I'm trying to think of the math here. We need it within 45 days of the close. So
yeah. Oh, that's
again,
not a problem.
Shouldn't be an issue. Shouldn't be a problem. I wouldn't think.
No.
Well, it wouldn't be 45, Scott. I mean, like today's. I mean, it'd be 30.
That's what I'm saying. Like if we didn't have this, say for instance, for this meeting. I guess technically.
Well, you have it for this meeting because we got the bank recs and did everything in April. So
right.
So we'll figure it out.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
We'll work with it. We'll see what we can do.
Okay. Sorry, Tammy. Go ahead.
Okay, so going on, there's some other ones that are like transfer funds or fiduciary funds, and we can estimate how much is going to come through there, and then that way you guys will have kind of an indication if the money went through properly. So that's your call on whether you want those budgets entered that way. Here you can see the principal, interest, and then unexpended balance, but it was expected to be paid. And so again, I have a note when that was posted, and then going down, there's some that we kind of changed up the process of how the principal and interest, again, with these funds that are transferred to another fund to pay the debt service. And so these would need to be adjusted, the principal and interest up to the transfer line, and then the principal and interest recorded out of the other fund. So I can work with the clerk's office on those items to get those adjusted. But otherwise, we don't see any indication with these to have to do an additional appropriation at this time.
Okay. So Tammy, this is Troy. So I'm gonna kind of piggyback on what Scott said, and obviously, we can't see those notes. So one of the things, like I went through this and kind of wrote some of my own notes, like hey, what is this or what is that? Just so more really for my understanding. If I would, and this is what I would ask that I would do is if you would send those to me. And with everybody's help, is what I will do is I'll write out kind of what my comments were before next Friday, and then that way disseminate it out to the rest of the finance committee and yourself, Tammy, and Todd and Cindy and everyone, so that way, and in the future I think we would be able to do that in this meeting. Does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody kind of good with that?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
I'm good with it, Troy.
Oh, okay. I mean, because even some of the things that, they're probably inconsequential, really. In the whole scheme of things. But for instance, I was just like, I wonder why insurance is twice as high. Well, maybe for police. Well, maybe that was because we pay every other month. I have no idea. Or something like that. But things like that, and where I was looking at, or even just some of the Grand Junction things, thinking, well, we don't have an actual budget necessarily in that piece of it, but we have the expenditure side. But so are we budgeting are we budgeting out Grand Junction on a quarterly basis or at least annual basis, saying, hey, this is what we expect to do in this quarter or that quarter? And Tim, I'm not. That's not to put you on the spot there. I'm just talking out loud, actually. So.
No, and you're correct. But some of those Grand Junction funds are those inner funds that we were talking about, because we have a liquidity account, investment account, and the construction fund, right? And those transfers come out of one and go into another. And so that's, a conversation with you, the clerk's office, to see how best to represent those in the system so that it's not misleading about, that's a transfer account. It's not a miscellaneous expense, right? As you would traditionally see when it says miscellaneous, it's not what, it could be perceived as. It is a transfer. And then on the revenue side, if we would add those in the system, then you would see that balance out, that, one quarterly expense equals one quarterly revenue, and you could see that flow from one fund to another fund.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell me, this is Mija. I understand, but right now revenue is actually overrated because you put it in money revenue for twice the investment side. So I brought it up. There was no budgeted transfer side, the expense side. So revenue is overrated right now. It's more than what you expect. That's not true revenue.
Right. So if we could add it to the budget side, then I think everybody would be able to see what is expected, and then to make sure that both the revenue side and the expense side match.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. If nothing else, so because I know the way that this this report, this appropriation summary report is generated, is there a way to put that into Excel and then at least to add those revenue lines back in? Is that difficult to do or no?
Absolutely difficult. And the reason is when these reports are run, they're run from the system. And so there's lines that are added and hidden and everything else because it's an automated report. So if, say, we had a file and we wanted to copy and paste that into this report, it wouldn't work. Because of the hidden lines and things like that on the report that's generated, that's pulling from the system.
So do we use like Crystal reports or something like that?
It's similar. It's called JET reports.
Oh, that's the JET reports. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'm just thinking. Joe, do you have any comments on that? You've probably seen this stuff more than we have.
Well, yeah, in a different form and in a different way. It's a different animal. But I would say because of this council and this finance committee, which we haven't had before, we're miles ahead of where the prior council was in sensing what's going on. There are two things here, budget to actual, and then cash flow. And those things can be a little different at times. And I think we have to, especially not necessarily this year, but next year, we're going to have to pay attention to cash flow and be very careful about what may be coming up. Now, I know we're careful now, but we may have to look a little in the future. So I applaud Tammy and Cindy and Misha and everybody that's worked on this, you too, Troy, in getting this together. We are way, way ahead of where previous councils have been, I believe.
I appreciate that, but it's really not me. It's really them. I mean, seriously. I know that, and I know there's back and forth. There's always going to be that, I mean, when you're trying to create something different and new. I mean, it's just different. So I'm sorry, Tammy. I did not mean to interrupt you. I mean,
Yeah. This is Joe again. I think we've taken, small steps towards a product that will get better over time, and I appreciate what everybody's doing.
Okay, thanks.
Troy?
Yeah.
You asked about this revenue and appropriations report.
Yeah.
Can be done. It can be done through the job reports, but like I say, we don't have a license here, but it can be done. Findlay Cook or some anybody has a license, they can do it.
Okay. Well, we can talk. Let's talk about that later then. Okay.
Yeah. And Misha, Troy was talking about entering in the revised budgets.
Yeah.
In reference to that. So that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And Tammy, if you're familiar with crystal reports, that's why I was thinking maybe we could create something like that, but maybe not. I don't know. But let's talk about that offline. I mean,
you're talking about outside of NAV, right, Troy?
Yeah.
Okay. Just one double check.
Outside of NAV, it can be done too.
Okay. All right. Tammy, go ahead. I know we keep interrupting you. Sorry.
No, that's all right. So that's just the basics on the appropriations summary report. And then I know in the interest of time that we probably want to get on to the next topic if there's no other questions on this basic. Troy, just email me your questions and then we'll go from there on getting it. So you would want it on the council agenda for the next council meeting?
Yeah. If you would, please send out to Joe, Scott, and myself all your notes as well.
Okay.
Is that good with you, Scott and Joe? I mean,
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, and
Right.
that way we can make it part of the record for the public. But that way, if we have comments back, we'll try to get that out to everyone. And then that way I think it'll alleviate some of the bottleneck once we get to the council and the overall meeting, especially when we all get back in public. And all together. So hopefully maybe a lot of those questions will be answered beforehand with the notes. Yeah. Okay.
And on that same note, if it would probably be better to have a version without the notes whenever it's available as soon as possible for the public. And then through this process with the finance committee, we can make sure that all the notes are on here that you guys had questions on so that everybody would have that same basis of understanding.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Let's keep moving forward if we can, then.
So the next topic is on the COVID-19. And John, do you mind going through that summary of the COVID?
So as John prepares to do that, everyone, this is Todd. So as this pandemic began to kind of make a clutch on really the world in early March, we as administration began to identify, recognizing that the cascading effects this will have on our revenue streams. And so we've been working, and Tammy and John and all the directors have been working together to identify what our budgetary reactions are going to be, should be, working with the sustainability plan and FSG, our financial advisor, on projecting revenue reductions in all forms of revenue. Gas tax, as you can imagine, food and beverage is another large one, income tax with unemployment. So what we have done, and this is a working document, I want to qualify that. I can't qualify that enough, but this is a working document. It's very fluid in how we've identified and what we've identified as potential budget reductions in this current year, and particularly looking into 2021. Usually government units follow economic downturns. They follow them down, and then they follow them back out. So we're going to present to you, this is a draft form. It's a working document, and again, very fluid, and will change many times in the weeks to come, where we stand just roughly 6-8 weeks into this this quarantine and the stay at home. And we'll know more today, potentially after the governor gives guidance on what's going to reopen. So I just want to kind of set that up for the presentation. We'll have to spend a lot of time with it, and we'll certainly entertain your questions. So, if, John, are you ready for that?
I can take it.
Okay.
If you can hear me.
Yep.
So on the revenue side, I want to start with that first. As many of you know, our main revenue sources are property taxes and income taxes.
Hey, sorry. Hey, Tammy, this is I talked to Todd this morning. Were we able to get that over to Chris so he could upload it so we can see it? Or
I'll be able to pull it up. Oh, but you can't see it. Here, let me email them to you real quick.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Troy, this is Chris. Are you able to see the agenda right now?
Yeah, I can see the agenda. It's for some reason, and maybe Scott is the same in the same boat. But for some reason, I can't see that when Tammy pulls something up. Are you still? Can you not see it, Scott? When
I can see the agenda fine, but your explanation's perfect. I'm completely in the same boat.
Okay.
Tammy, why don't you email it to me and I'll throw it up there.
Yeah, please. That'd be awesome. I don't know if folks that are calling in are in the same boat or not. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Mike Johns. I'm in the same boat.
Okay.
This is Joe. I'm completely in the same boat. I'm going to have to ask Tammy to produce some paper for me on this meeting, but that's it.
Can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't see anything either but the agenda.
Okay. There we go. It looks like, oh, nope.
Almost.
I see something.
I started to see something.
Tammy, which file would you like first?
Assumptions, please.
Oh, somebody took over sharing.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. You can take it back.
We need to make a YouTube video of how to have a finance committee meeting, right? I mean,
It might not be a bad idea.
Maybe we'll get one or two more under our belt, and then we'll make that video, Troy.
yeah. No, I don't know if anybody's ever seen those comedy videos of the online meetings and so on. They're hilarious.
We're working our way through. I think we're doing a good job.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, Chris, I stopped sharing if you want to share it and see if everyone can see it.
Hey, while we're sitting here, I have a question. Tammy, can you send me that resolution number where the encumbrances was approved by council from 19 to 20?
There are none.
There was no council approval for the encumbrances?
What encumbrances?
I thought there's encumbrances. You showed encumbrances on the, you pointed out.
Oh, no, I was just, there's the columns are labeled on there, and I just wanted council to be aware of what those columns meant.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't remember one, but I just wanted to see if you had that by chance. So, okay.
There was encumbrance in 2020.
There was? We didn't.
Yeah, 20, IT has a 101-007-331. There was a March through the PO through the encumbrance. And there was some of them. And also, they have a couple of them.
Not just normal POs through the council process is what the forwarded encumbrance on the budget side is. I think what you're talking about is the actual side.
Actual side, yeah.
But yeah, what Cindy was referring to is the budget side.
Okay. Chris, are you there? Chris? Did we lose Chris?
I don't know.
Chris, are you there?
I'm on the call.
Okay. Were you able to get that on the screen?
I'm having some technical difficulties, as it turns out.
Okay.
So it will not let me for some reason.
Maybe you can just email to the three of us then real quickly and.
Yeah, and then I'll share what I have on my screen.
Okay. That sounds good. Thanks, Tammy. I mean, hopefully at some point we'll be able to get back together again, even if Joe and Scott and I spread out completely up on that stage. But maybe we can, if we have to do this again, maybe if we put together a packet that people can download, and I will get better at it. So, yeah.
Let me know when you're ready.
As soon as that comes through. I still don't have it yet. But... Oh,
Okay.
hey, there we go.
So if you open up the assumptions document first, that's the one I have pulled up.
Okay. It's a little blurry on my screen, but that's okay. I mean, let's roll with it.
Okay. So due to COVID-19, municipalities, we still get hit. We don't get the same retail income that gets hit the hardest right now, but we do have some revenue streams that are going to be affected in 2020 as well as in the future. But we do have strong cash balances in both the corporate and TIF accounts, so we will not need to borrow. So that's one thing that I want to stress. A lot of the other municipalities that don't have those cash balance reserves aren't going to be able to make their June 30th debt payments because the property taxes aren't due until July 15th. So depending on how those revenues come in, and we don't know at this point how they are going to come in for our specific community, but we have assumptions on here for what we are expecting. And this is just a point in time, and we've never gone through this before, so these could be off, but this is what we're using in order to gauge how we should adjust our expenses and be able to adapt going forward. So as you'll notice on here, as I mentioned, the property taxes, while they are due in 2020, they will be delayed, but we still do expect to get them. So we're only projecting a 5% reduction for 2020 in property taxes. Some of the other taxes, the license excise tax, same thing, 5%, cigarette tax, 5%, the same with the TIF tax revenue, 5%. Food and beverage is the one that you can see as a very high percentage. So we're estimating 30%, but again, we don't have a way to gauge that because we haven't received a distribution that was during the COVID experience. And so in April, we get it usually the first week of the month, and our April was right in line. So our first quarters were right in line with where we were last year. And so this next payment that we'll get, which will be sometime this next week, we'll be able to have an indication of where those food and beverage dollars will stand, and whether they are collecting them at a lower rate or whether they're remitting them at a lower rate will depend on how we will be affected by that revenue loss. The Nbh and Lrs distributions, those ones, we originally had a lower percentage, but in the last few days, we actually increased that more because the gas stations and whoever's collecting those taxes are remitting it later than expected. And so to be conservative, we've bumped those up to 20%, as you can see on there. Interest on investment, obviously the interest rate has dropped, and so we'll have a lower amount of interest on the money that we have in the bank. Ambulance, less people are calling for emergency services during this time, so we do expect a hit in that line. And then, of course, the sports campus is also reduced because there are a multitude of events that have been canceled during this time. So in 2021, you'll notice our second largest income may be affected by as much as 10%. So that revenue stream is important, and we will know by September 30th on what our distribution for 2021 will be. The reason why that income tax is not anything more than zero in 2020, because at this time we do still feel that the distribution that was given, that was certified in 2019 based on prior distributions, will be distributed as scheduled in 2020. It's just the income taxes that are filed for 2020 that we will get dispersed in 2021, where we are expecting that great decrease there. And then you can see Riverboat is the same kind of thing. We've already been certified for our distribution for that Riverboat tax. And then in 2021, we do expect a decline from those gaming establishments being closed. Does anyone have any questions on these basic assumptions?
Tammy, this is Troy. So, what's a dollar number here? I mean, do you have an idea? I mean, did you extrapolate that out into like, hey, we expected 42 million and now it's 37 or 38, or I mean?
Yeah, we're still working through those on the sustainability plan, but at this point, it's millions of dollars, and when we're looking at it, and like I said, these numbers can change at a drop of the hat, like I said, with the Nbh and the LRS. So we are working on that revenue side and predicting as close as possible as we get more information from the state and the state entities that are creating these formulas and getting guidance from the DLGF, the Department of Local Government Finance, on if any of the timelines have been extended out and things like that. That it is definitely a work in progress, but I would say between $3 and $6 million is what we're looking at for these revenue streams going down. Now, the good news, as I mentioned, was we do have an offset of some of these revenues in the increase in revenues that we've seen from some of the permitting side. And so we had underestimated some of those revenues as to be conservative, and events like COVID-19 and unexpected, that's kind of what we are planning for in some of the sustainability plan, that we don't want to count on the moon, right? We want to start and have lower, and if we get in higher, then it can help offset instances like this. So on the expense side, what we've done is we've asked the departments to go and cut about 13% of their supplies and services budget. So, keeping their personnel intact where it makes sense, then the supplies and services would be cut. And you can see that everybody's kind of pitched in and identified those expenses that can be either delayed or that they don't need. Some of it is natural due to COVID. So, and a good example of that would be the gasoline lines. So the vehicles are driving around and whatnot, but with separate crews and things like that, then those lines naturally go down, as well as with just the gas prices going down, right? Electricity in buildings that aren't being used and things like that, with everybody working remotely. The flip side of that is, IT has additional expenses that would be needing to be provided for during this time. Those costs, we are working with the county to get reimbursement from FEMA. And so there is potential that we will get some of this money back. That is our hope. But until then, we've identified this as, round one cuts, knowing that depending on what the governor speaks to and further orders for the state, that might affect these numbers even more, as our revenues might change. And so this is our just first round of what we can do. You can see, general and fire funds up at the top, almost $1 million. Grand Park, you have $1.3 million identified, and then between some of the public works funds, another $1 million. So those categories, there's over $3 million that we're going to forego in this 2020 budget. Knowing that 2021 will be equally as hard, we would expect that whatever budget we reduce to, that we would maintain that reduced level. Now the categories can change within the departments, right? We're not going on training out to training. They're doing it virtually and at less cost, right? So, but next year we might need to up the training line and then forego somewhere else. And so those opportunity costs of the departments and splitting between them will work out with the overall numbers. But we do expect to hold a reduced amount going into 2021 as we ramp up this 2021 budget season.
Okay.
So Tammy, let me interject here, just kind of put a bow on this from an administration for the edification of the Council of Finance. We recognize that a lot of paradigms have shifted here, and so we've tasked the directors to really look at their operations, their expenses. Are there positions within the organization that can be merged job functions? And so we'll continue to report back to this committee on what we're doing to remain malleable and still stay in a positive cash position. So we can, it'll be an ongoing conversation.
I think this looks good, guys. Thank you. Okay.
Appreciate that, Tammy.
Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so I had on here just a discussion of Grand Park agreements. So the only thing I was going to say on that is I'm just so everybody knows, I'm meeting with Andy next week, or the mayor, to discuss some of our agreements, and I think we're going to talk maybe, as obviously, a lot of our hotel revenues are going to be impacted, kind of as Tammy alluded to, and then obviously they're making some cuts out there as well. So hopefully, we'll make some headway there, and as we're kind of, I'm trying to keep my pulse on what a lot of other places are doing, just around the country in terms of ballparks, et cetera. So that's just more of a statement than anything else. Does anyone else have anything else that they'd like to say or mention before we adjourn?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Todd once again. It is May 1st, and so as we always do every year about this time, we're going to start ramping up with some great intensity the budget process. And so we will communicate to this committee on how you can participate, if you want to participate kind of in the minutia of this process. Right now, it's obviously a little disjointed. Hopefully that won't carry on in perpetuity, but just be aware that it is that time of year. And certainly if everything we've already mentioned, we'll have our hands around that, but we'll certainly communicate to you in this committee on how you want to participate shoulder to shoulder, hand in glove in our process.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Joe, Scott?
No, I'd just like to, oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to thank everybody again for the efforts to bring this report together. I know it's a lot of work. I know we've said it before, but it really is appreciated, and we certainly are going the right direction. So thank you again.
Yeah, I would echo the same comments. Joe, you have anything?
Yeah, just the same thing. I think we're miles ahead of where we would have been had we not had this information, and we'll get better with it as time goes along.
Right. Okay, so we'll get those notes and we'll get everything disseminated out to everybody and some comments and we'll go from there. With that being said, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. I believe that is all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Troy. Good job.
Okay.